Well, welcome back, everybody, and today we are going to be looking at communications a little bit more. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Johari window. I don't know if you've ever heard of that model before, but what this model typifies, or what it tells us, is that there are things that we know that others know, there are things that we know that others don't know, and there's some things that none of us know. So in order to better communicate, it's best to know what side or what area of the quadrant we're on. And the Johari window has a set of 4 quadrants that tells us that. So let's take a look at it today. We're going to do a little bit more before that, but just focus today, especially for the test that's coming up tomorrow, on the Johari window, and we'll get through it, and we'll be ready for the exam tomorrow. God bless you. Okay, everybody, welcome back, and today we're going to be finishing up with Chapter 10, Interpersonal and Group Process Approaches. Your test will be available tomorrow, so make sure you get a good night's sleep and study for it, and if you have any issues with it, you can call me, and I'll be glad to help you. 901-270-6257 is my cell phone, and you feel free to give me a call if you're having any trouble accessing this exam tomorrow. Now, yesterday we took a look at processes and just a broad sweeping kind of introduction to processes. And if you remember, we talked about 2 types of intervention when it comes to processes. You have the individual and you have the group. Now, as you see here, the individual intervention is aimed at helping people better communicate with others. And that's not just the workers, it's everybody within the organization. And a good way of kind of understanding who you are and helping you to better communicate is what we call here the Johari window. And we're going to be looking at here just in a minute in the next slide, I believe. We have the intervention that deals with the individual, but we also have group intervention, and that's aimed at the process, the contents, or structure of the group. And if you remember yesterday, there are several types of groups. There's an interdependent group. There are groups that are kind of collaborative. It just depends on the nature of the work that needs to be done. And that will determine what type of group you're in. But understanding the dynamics, well, no matter what type of group, you still have to be able to communicate and work effectively with each other instead of against each other. And that's one of the keys to effective OD interventions, is facilitating that ability with your people. Now, the Johari window is as you see here, a visual depiction of how we relate to others and how we relate to ourselves. There's what we call the hidden window, and these are issues that are known to you but unknown to others. You know, some people, and it's very important to understand this when it comes to leadership, because I had to learn the hard way several times. You need to be transparent if you're going to be a leader, as transparent as you can. The less you communicate to the people, the more apprehensive and distrustful they're going to be. And this is what they're talking about here. This is unknown to others, this quadrant right here. Now, you may know what's going on, but if you withhold it to others, there may be information that you're holding that they need to know to gain trust or to gain respect, for you to gain trust and respect and to get the processes going. Now, I can tell you from a ministry standpoint and from a business standpoint, I try to be as transparent as I can with my people. That's showing them respect, that I trust that they can handle whatever information I give them, good or bad. Now, in ministry, that can be tricky. There have been times when I've had to deal with ministers in my church, and because of the nature of what they've done, I've had to fire them.
not without going through my deacons and my personnel committee, but when it comes to spiritual things, my deacons and I make the decisions. When it comes to personnel or administrative areas, myself and the personnel committee rule over that, or we make decisions over that. Rule is a bad thing. I don't rule anything, believe me. But when it comes, and I made sure that the church knew, that there are some things I can tell you, there's some things that I can't. When it comes to the confidentiality of my church, there are things that I do know, and the church respects that, because I'm not going to go out and tell everybody what brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so did. So there are things that you know that you can't tell others. But normally, when it comes to the hidden window, there are issues that you know to self and unknown to others. If you're looking at downsizing, you may not want to tell the person that 6 months out, because then you've got a mass exodus of people and you got to keep the operations going. Now, law requires that you do notify your employees of drastic things like that. But for the most part, the more you keep to yourself and the less that others know, that's the hidden window, and it usually doesn't work out too well for you as a leader or the organization. Then you have the unknown window, and the unknown window is still unknown to others, but these are issues that you don't know and the others don't know. So this is something that may catch you out of the blue, something that you didn't expect. Coronavirus, dealing with this disease and this sickness. Who would have known that in just a short amount of time, businesses would have to rethink everything? In fact, many of them were shut down. So an unknown window is unknown to you and unknown to others, but it does have an impact on your organization. Now we come over here to the other side, and this is known to others. This is the open window. And here you know, and here you don't know, as far as yourself. The open window, the issues known to self and known to others. Here's where the communication comes in. This is where you're talking to people, and they're talking to you, and there's nothing being held back. And there should be, with this type of structure, there should be an environment of trust, where they trust you and you trust them, because you're communicating to each other. And then the blind window, and these are issues unknown to you, but others know it. There could be a circumstance where you are coming across abrasive with the individuals, and you don't know that you're doing that. You're not sensitive to that, but they know that you are abrasive. And I've seen that time and time again. People come across in different ways, and they may not realize they're coming across that way. My wife and I, when we moved to Horn Lake, Mississippi, we went to a church, and customarily I wore a suit and tie. She wore a nice outfit, pantsuit, and the kids were dressed up. So we walked in this church, and the people were in shorts, jogging pants, tank tops. I mean, it was nothing like what I thought it would be. We weren't offended by it, don't get me wrong. We didn't have any opinion, but we knew that we were dressed differently. And the Lord led us to that church. And we never, gave it a second thought. When we got there, we went through the service, and when the service was over, we talked to the pastor, and we visited a couple of times. But I noticed people were friendly, but they were kind of, I don't want to say rigid, but I could tell they were not at ease with us. But we decided after a while that this is where the Lord wanted us, so we started serving there. And I think it was about 2 years before they actually got to where we were just Brother Tom and Miss Cindy. That's my wife's name. And they told me, said, Brother Tom, said, you may not believe this, but when you first walked in the door, we were scared to death. And I said, why in the world would you be scared to death? They said, because we thought that you were from the association and that you were going to close the church down. And I was taken aback. I said, what in the world? I said, associations don't close churches. They don't fire pastors, at least not that I know of. But they said it was just your demeanor and the way that you carried yourself. Now, folks, I had just come out of the military after 20 years, and I had a certain walk, and I guess I still have it because everybody says that I walk differently, and they can tell it's me just by the way I walk. But I look straight-necked, no nonsense, all about business and whatever, and I guess it's that military demeanor. And you know, several churches that I attended and served in said the same thing. I don't realize that I come across that way, and even my wife said, oh yeah, you come across that way. See, that's the blind window. Now, I know now because I've had people talk to me, but there are things about you. Don't think that you are Mr. or Mrs. all that everybody loves you, or that you're perceived as being a certain way, because that may not be the case. You know, I try to be fun-loving. I thought I was fun-loving and funny and easygoing and easy to be around with, and these people were scared to death of me. And that's been one of the biggest challenges in ministry because of the way that I do, I guess, carry myself. But and I've had to work on that to kind of blend in, so to speak, a little bit more. But be careful with the blind window. Now, there was a study done back in, I think it was around the 80s, when we started to get more involved in participative management techniques and management styles. And a research team interviewed the managers of a Fortune 500 company. And they asked these managers, how do you think the employees rate you? Are they happy with you and your management styles and all of that? And all the managers just gloated over themselves. Oh yeah, they love us. We have a good rapport with labor, and they are very loyal, and they want to do their best for us, and we think that we are doing the best job there can be. And then they interviewed the employees, and they discovered that the employees were so upset and dissatisfied with management that they were about to go on strike. So be very careful with the blind window. These things are unknown to you, but they are known to others. So, and the only way you're going to be able to really get an idea is get out there and get to know them. You know, ask them and ask for honest feedback. Now, sometimes they won't do it because they're afraid you'll fire them if they give you negative feedback. But kind of keep your ear to the wall as much as you can, and pick up on cues that people have. I mean, I noticed that they were loving and welcoming and all of that, but there was just that lack of ease that I perceived on their part when they would come around me, and it was just because they were nervous and scared. So, so this is the Johari window, and knowing this, especially when you're interacting in groups, will help you a lot. Now, ways to improve communication, as you see here, when it comes to the hidden and the unknown window, it's what I said a while ago. Be transparent. Communicate with the people. The more you communicate, the more trust you're going to garner. And don't try to just sporadically do it. Just when things are happening and you want to talk to them to maybe benefit you or your position or the company's position. Give them the good and the bad as it comes along. Everything you can share, you need to share. And then to reduce the amount of unknown to self, ask for feedback. Just like I said a while ago in the last slide, talk to people, get feedback, do an anonymous survey. Be careful, though, of what you ask for, because they may give it to you, and it may be painful. But it's better to know that now than for them to walk out on you and abandon the workplace or go on strike or whatever, and then you find out that you could have changed, or you should have changed who you are, or at least your demeanor. Now, sometimes you can get a third party come in, and these are activities that focus on interpersonal conflict within the organization. These interventions help involve parties interact with each other directly, diagnosing the conflict and its resolution. Really what you're getting down to is getting people to talk, figuring out that conflict isn't necessarily bad. Now, there's two types of conflict. There is warranted and unwarranted conflict. Warranted conflict is necessary if you're going to be innovative, if you're going to be moving forward, because here you challenge each other and ideas, and it's through that you can learn. Unwarranted conflict is when you take off the gloves and you go beyond the idea, and then you start attacking and challenging the person personally. So that's what you don't need. And a lot of times people get defensive, and they think because you're attacking their idea, you're attacking them. But this is where your third-party intervention can come in. But really, you could do it yourself if you're adept at this kind of stuff, getting them to separate and to sit down and realize that, we're all a part of the same organization. So let's focus on resolving the heart of the conflict that originally came up. So I wish churches would do that a lot more. But diagnosing the problem and then working on a solution towards the problem can help the organization get away from the personal end of it and start focusing on resolving the problem at hand. Now, here you have the cyclical model of interpersonal conflict. You have the event, which is brought on by the issue here. Then you have the behavior that elicits the consequences. It brings consequences about. And then you have issues and behavior and consequences and this, that, and the other. Now, here's the thing you need to know. If you can't resolve this first phase effectively, if it gets personal here, chances are it's going to get personal here. And you're going to create a cycle of destruction. You're never going to be able to get anything done. So a lot of times people will avoid it. Okay, well, we got through that, but you got feelings that are hurt. You've got bad blood between people. These are the consequences here that you see that can evolve from either warranted or productive conflict or non-productive conflict. So you want to make it productive so that when you come together again, you know to start focusing on, right from the very beginning, the issues and not the person. And then if you can focus on the issues, the behaviors are going to change, and then the consequences are going to change. That's key to conflict management. If not, then as you see here, it's a cycle. You'll either promote a cycle of productive conflict whenever disagreements come, or you're going to promote a cycle of destruction as consequences emerge that are going to perpetuate more negative consequences. Now, team building and OD, really you're looking at helping groups perform tasks and solve problems more effectively. Really, it's taking a look at, again, the systems approach. This is how you operate, and this is how it affects your partner here and the other people. Team building can facilitate other OD interventions such as employee involvement or work design, and sometimes when you get into the processes you can discover that maybe we need to restructure the whole design of the work itself. And sometimes because of the way things are changing, more often than not, you're going to have to change your work design anyway to keep up with the demands of the environment. So that's always a good segue into this type of training and development. Team building is professionally facilitated and strongly connected to a diagnosis and the improvement of the team's functioning. So really it's a step-by-step process where you consult, you diagnose. From that diagnosis, You work out a plan of remedy and you implement the remedy. It goes step by step by step. There's nothing far outreaching academically or mentally or most of the time physically. You can do these things as long as you follow the steps. And that's what you're teaching them, is just these steps that go into these processes. Now finally, we're going to take a look at teams. And there isn't anything profound. You have groups reporting to the same manager, groups involving people with common goals. Then you have temporary groups formed to accomplish a specific one-time task. We talked about that. And after that, they adjourn. Groups consisting of people whose work roles are interdependent. And I would argue that most groups are interdependent. And groups with no formal links, but whose collective purpose requires coordination. So I'll just give you one: football team. I mean, well, they have formal links, I guess, but they all come together for a purpose, and that may be a focus group on something, or a group that can help you create new ideas and innovations and so forth. But these are all the types of teams that you can work with. And whether it's a team or a group, and I would argue they've got types of teams up at the top, but they've got groups down here. I would argue that they are different. They are structured differently. But right now, we'll just go with what they've got. But take all this in, specifically make sure you understand the Johari window, because that's going to be on your test. And I'll be praying for you. And good luck, everybody, on the exam tomorrow. And then we'll catch back up again with Chapter 11 next week. God bless you. Have a good day.
Well, today we saw the Johari window and how there are circumstances where some may be in the know and some may not. It's important to understand this, because as we come across to people, and this is probably where you're going to see this most of all, as we come across to people, we may not really realize how we come across and how they take us. Also, if we're not willing to be transparent, that's going to result in consequences that can be very hurtful at times, especially in ministry. So that's all we have for today. Tomorrow we'll have the test. I'll be praying for you, and I know you'll do well. God bless you, and we will resume next week.